This necklace is actually something that I inherited from my grandmother. She was in the fashion industry in New York City, and she was a clothes horse and a jewelry horse. My grandmother was very intelligent, independent, smart businesswoman, but also very beautiful and very into fashion. She taught me a lot about business and being savvy and being, sorry. Just not being afraid to stand up for what's right and not to go with the grain, but to go against it when it mattered. And she instilled a lot of that in me. I mean, her and I were very, very, very close. We talked on the phone all the time. We shared a lot of the same interests and ideas, and I guess she saw something in me that I didn't, that nobody else did. She believed in me, and she put her life in my hands. And I can't tell you why she did that. I don't know. I don't know. I can only imagine it's because of the relationship that we had. I was newly married. God bless my husband. Anyways, thought he was in law school, and we were gonna have this great life. I got the phone call that my grandmother didn't show up to her bridge game, and they called the cops to go knock on the door, and nobody answered. And so they knocked the door down, and they found her laying on the bed, and she had started writing out my name. I looked at her and I said, "Do you want to fight?" And she shook her head very decisively, yes. And it was that moment of clarity that I realized this was happening and this was real, and I just clicked into a different mode. Like, I just knew I had to fight for her because she couldn't fight for herself. I did not understand in that moment the commitment, the sacrifice, the struggle. I had no clue. A little bit later, I want to say it was like 9, 10 a.m. in the morning, I don't remember exactly, alarm started going off, and the nurse came rushing in. I looked over at the heart rate monitor. Her heart rate had dropped to 29 BPM, which really shouldn't be alive. And the nurse looked at me, and she says, "Well, what do you want me to do?" And I said, "What do you mean, what do I want you to do?" "I want you to save her life." And she was surprised by my answer. It was shocking. And that was the first time for me that I realized that there is a pervasive attitude of, this woman she was 93 when this happened, and she had had a good life and long life. What else do you want? And kind of let her go. Why waste? It felt like, why waste resources? And that became more and more reinforced the harder I had to fight to sustain her life. All it took was an external pacemaker, which took about 15 minutes, and she was fine. I mean, relatively fine. So that was the first introduction to the reality of what I consider to be a pretty broken system. We got through the hospital. It took us 3 weeks, and a big challenge about that was, what do we do next? Where do we go? What are our options? How do you even get somebody that is bedbound from New Jersey to another state? These are all things that I had to learn very, very quickly. And we got her to where I was currently living in Charleston, South Carolina at the time. Began a whole new phase of the journey. Finding resources for caregiving, for setting up a care plan, for taking care of someone was next to impossible. I felt alone. I felt I didn't have any help. I didn't know where to turn. My parents hadn't been through this yet. And I just had to adapt and do the best that I could. And the first thing I did was hire a home health agency. And I realized very quickly it was very expensive, and I was paying $22 to $24 an hour for CNA care, but I was really getting $8 worth of care because that's what they were getting paid. And they were making fatal errors and sleeping while I was in the next room, not taking care of her. And I just realized that I was gonna have to try something different. And so I took on the responsibility of become her care manager and connecting with CNAs directly so that I could pay them more money and get more value for the care. There was a time where somebody was stealing her cancer medication, and I had no idea. They were replacing it with, liquid morphine, which she had to have for the pain of her stroke, and they thought she had cancer as well. They didn't know, though. And they were replacing it with water. So she was going through withdrawals, and I didn't know what was wrong with her. And then finally I put two and two together. I don't even know how. I just had an intuition. And I looked that person up, and she had been arrested for morphine and drugs and grand theft. And I immediately ran to the liquid morphine and shook it because it's like a very thick consistency regularly, and it was water. Some of the high points is one of her CNAs, Martina Davis, is one of the most amazing people I've ever met, and she saved me. I'm still friends with her today. She took incredible care of my grandmother and had an awesome work ethic, and I ended up promoting her to manage the staff of the CNAs, and because she was a CNA, she was so good at talking their language, and just she knew it. And I'm friends with her to this day. We stand on their shoulders. They do have value. Our grandparents, our parents, they poured who they were into us so that we could be who we are. And there's value in that. I don't think, the people who raised you, who, picked you up every day from kindergarten when you were vulnerable and took care of you, I don't think anybody wants to leave them in a vulnerable situation. I don't think anybody wants that. But I think that it's set up in such a way where there's not a lot of options, and to go the route that I went is very, very, very difficult. Doing the same old thing and just saying it's important and we need to change is not going to work. It's broken in all the joints, and it needs to be fixed, and there needs to be a conversation among the people who are going to be affected, and find creative solutions to these problems, not Band-Aids, but creative solutions that actually affect systemic change. There are other ways to do it. There are better ways to do it. And I think that the generation of seniors coming up need to demand the conversation and demand the change. That's the only way it's going to happen.